The low hum of a vintage Rolls-Royce sliced through the quiet drizzle that was a signature of the Pacific Northwest, a sound entirely foreign to the tranquil grounds of Havenwood Orphanage. The persistent mist blurred the landscape into a moody canvas of deep greens and slate grays, with the orphanage itself rising from the fog like a forgotten relic on the outskirts of Seattle. Beatrice Thompson set aside a stack of freshly laundered denims, her attention caught by the unusual disturbance penetrating the thin walls of her office. In 20 years as Havenwood's director, she knew that unscheduled arrivals, especially ones of this caliber, were rarely a harbinger of good fortune. Through the rain-slicked window, she saw a tall man emerge from the vehicle's rear. His shock of silver hair and perfectly tailored suit seemed to belong to a different universe than this rustic, well-loved, but weary setting. His driver scrambled with an umbrella, but the man waved it aside with a dismissive flick of his wrist, choosing instead to let the fine mist settle on his face as his eyes took in the orphanage's weather-beaten siding. The protest of the main door's old hinges echoed down the halls, followed by the sound of urgent footsteps on the scuffed linoleum floor. A young resident appeared, breathless at her office door, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Ms. Thompson, Henry Kensington, is here the billionaire. Beatrice felt a jolt, a skip in the rhythm of her heart. Henry Kensington, the tech mogul turned philanthropist, whose foundation was reshaping institutions across the nation. Her hands, calloused from years of hard work, trembled almost imperceptibly as she straightened her simple apron, painfully aware of the faint stains that no amount of bleach could ever fully erase. In the main hall, where flaking paint on the wainscoting chronicled decades of small hands, Henry Kensington waited with a quiet composure that belied his reputation as a titan of industry. His eyes, famously intense in boardrooms, were surprisingly gentle as they studied the faded photographs lining the walls, a silent testament to the generations of children who had found shelter here. "Mr. Kensington," Beatrice managed, extending a hand. "What a surprise." "Please call me Henry," he responded, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes and softening his features. "I hope I'm not interrupting your day?" A loud thud from the floor above sent a cascade of dust motes dancing in the weak light, filtering through the windows. Henry glanced upward, a flicker of curiosity in his expression, while Beatrice sighed. "The children are on break," she explained, a flush of warmth rising on her cheeks. "Our facilities have their challenges." "I see," Henry commented, his gaze tracing a crack that snaked across the ceiling like a river on an old map. "Would you mind showing me around?" As they navigated the narrow corridors, the contrast between Henry's Italian suit and the humble surroundings was stark. Inquisitive faces peeked from doorways, whispers erupting in their wake about the mysterious visitor. A small huddle of boys guiltily shoved a deck of trading cards behind their backs. In the makeshift library, donated books with worn spines stood precariously on slightly bowed shelves, held together by years of careful tending and ingenuity. Henry paused before a particularly battered copy of The Little Prince, its pages yellowed and secured with tape. "You know, Beatrice," he began, his voice soft as he thumbed through the book, "when I was 12, I lived in a place a lot like this." Beatrice, who had been about to apologize for the state of the library, was stunned into silence. "It was an orphanage in Minnesota," he went on, carefully placing the book back in its spot. "I learned to read with this same story. Funny how life brings us back around, isn't it?" A scuffed soccer ball, rolling to a stop at his feet, interrupted the quiet moment. An 8-year-old boy named Michael, a bandage plastered on his knee, came running, halting abruptly as he saw the visitor. "Sorry, Ms. Beatrice," he gasped, his eyes darting between her and Henry. Henry crouched down, picking up the ball. "Do you play?" Michael nodded, a shy look on his face. "Every day, but the field's full of holes." And everyone else? Henry asked, spinning the ball between his hands with an unexpected dexterity. We have 30 children right now, Beatrice replied, her interest growing as she watched the exchange. Each has their own story, their own dreams. Michael's been here for 2 years. He's our official top scorer. In the kitchen, where old saucepans were strategically placed to catch drips from the leaky roof, Henry stopped. His gaze swept the room with a different kind of focus, as if he were making mental calculations. Mrs. Martha, the cook, stirred a steaming pot of stew, the vapor fogging her glasses as she tried to hide her curiosity about their esteemed guest. "Beatrice," Henry finally said, his voice now carrying a new gravity, "I think we need to talk about the future of Havenwood." The sound of children's laughter floated in from a cracked window pane, temporarily patched with a sheet of plastic, as Beatrice gripped the back of a worn chair, her heart pounding with a hope she hadn't dared to entertain in years. "In recent years," he began, pulling a thick envelope from his jacket, "I've been trying to give back to society what it gave me. I've built hospitals, funded research." He paused, his gaze fixed on the yard where Michael was celebrating an imaginary goal. But something always felt missing, something more personal. Beatrice stared at the envelope he placed on the worn laminate countertop, the crisp cream paper and the elegant Kensington Foundation logo looking utterly surreal in the modest kitchen. "What you've done here, Beatrice, with so little?" He gestured around, encompassing not just the kitchen, but the entirety of the orphanage. "It's extraordinary." The old bell clanged, announcing the end of recess, its sound echoing like a summons back to the world of routine. But for Beatrice Thompson, standing in that kitchen with Henry Kensington, reality was beginning to feel like the start of something monumental, something that could change everything. The orphanage's back door opened into a world of vibrant chaos, a symphony of laughter and joyful shouts. The yard, despite its patchy grass and well-used equipment, pulsed with the pure, unadulterated energy of childhood. Henry blinked, his eyes adjusting to the sudden brightness after the dim interior. "This is our recreation area," Beatrice explained, sidestepping a spinning jump rope. "It's not much, but the kids always find a way to turn any space into a playground." Henry smiled, his attention drawn to a group of children playing marbles under a sprawling oak tree. His gaze scanned the uneven grounds, taking in the various clusters, boys using backpacks as goalposts, older girls braiding hair on a peeling bench, a small circle absorbed in a sticker trade. And that's when he saw them. Tucked away in a quiet corner near a rusty swing set, 2 identical girls sat on the grass. Their matching yellow dresses, though clean, were clearly hand-me-downs, and their light brown hair was tied in perfectly mirrored pigtails that swayed in the gentle breeze. They were sharing a single picture book, turning the pages with an almost mesmerizing synchronicity. "Beatrice!" Henry called out softly, his eyes fixed on the pair. "Who are they?" Beatrice's gaze followed his, a soft sigh escaping her lips. "Lily and Daisy. They arrived 2 years ago. They were only a year old at the time." The twins, as if sensing they were being discussed, looked up in unison. Their eyes, a deep and mysterious green, met Henry's for a fleeting second before they quickly returned their attention to their book. "They don't usually play with the other children?" Henry asked, noting the invisible boundary that seemed to separate the girls from the happy pandemonium around them. "Rarely," Beatrice said, her hand instinctively smoothing her apron. "They're extremely shy. At first, we could barely separate them for bath time. Over time, they learned to trust me and Mrs. Martha, but—" She paused, searching for the right words. "It's like they have their own world, you know? A world that's just theirs." Henry nodded slowly, an inexplicable pull drawing him toward the girls. It felt like a strange magnetic force tugging him to that specific corner of the yard. "May I?" he asked, gesturing subtly in their direction. Beatrice hesitated. "You can try, but don't be surprised if they—" Before she could finish, Henry was already walking toward them, his steps measured and unthreatening. As he drew closer, he could hear a faint, melodic murmur. The twins were whispering the storybook's words in unison, their voices as synchronized as their page-turning. "Hello," he said gently, stopping a respectful distance away. "That's a very interesting book you have there." The girls froze, their small hands tightening on the book's edges. For a long moment, only the distant sounds of play filled the air. Then, very slowly, two heads lifted in perfect time. "It's about butterflies," one of them whispered, so softly Henry had to lean in to catch it. "They change colors," added the other, her voice a perfect echo of her sister's. Henry smiled and carefully sat on the grass, maintaining his distance. "You know, I really like butterflies, too." He rolled up the sleeve of his suit jacket slightly, revealing a wristwatch with a unique face. "Take a look." The twins' eyes widened. On the watch's face, a delicate enamel butterfly, a vibrant blue, marked the seconds, its wings appearing to flutter with each tick. "It's flying," whispered Lily, or maybe it was Daisy, leaning forward just a fraction. "Really?" asked the other, a touch of her shyness melting away. Henry unclasped the watch, his movements deliberately slow. "Would you like to see it up close?" The girls exchanged a silent look, a whole conversation passing between them in a glance. After a beat that felt suspended in time, they scooted closer, never breaking contact with each other. "You can hold it if you want," Henry offered, extending the watch on his open palm. "It's magical, you know. They say if you make a wish while the butterfly flutters its wings 3 times, it will come true." A spark of curiosity lit up their identical green eyes. In a single, coordinated motion, they moved together, their tiny hands touching the cool metal of the watch at the same time. "How can we tell which of us is which?" Beatrice, who had been observing with rapt fascination, heard one of the girls ask. Henry smiled, leaning in conspiratorially. "Well, I have a guess. You," he pointed gently to the one on the left, "must be Lily. And you," turning to the one on the right, "Daisy. Am I right?" The girls gasped, their eyes growing wide like twin moons. "How did you know?" they asked in unison. Henry winked. "Magic? Just like the butterfly on the watch." A tentative smile, the first Beatrice had seen on their faces in weeks, began to form. They shifted a little closer, still cradling the watch between them. "Can we make a wish?" Daisy asked, her voice a bit bolder now. "Together," Lily added, looking at her sister. "Of course you can," Henry replied, watching as they instantly squeezed their eyes shut, their heads leaning together as they waited for 3 flutters of the butterfly's wings. Beatrice, still standing a few paces away, felt a warm wetness on her cheek. In 20 years, she had rarely witnessed such an immediate, profound connection. There was something in the way Henry interacted with the twins, a natural kindness that went far beyond simple charity. The old bell rang again, signaling the end of recess. The other children began to file back inside, but for the first time since they had arrived at Havenwood, Lily and Daisy weren't the first to their feet. They remained seated, captivated by the magical watch and the man who had, in a matter of minutes, found a way into their private world. "Do we have to go?" Lily asked, a trace of sadness in her voice. "Are you going to take the butterfly away?" Daisy added, her small hand still resting protectively on the watch. Henry glanced at Beatrice, who gave a subtle nod. He smiled at the twins. "How about we let the butterfly rest here for a while? I can come back tomorrow to see if it helped your wish come true." The girls' eyes lit up with a new kind of hope. For the first time, they rose without haste, their small hands instinctively reaching out for Henry's. As they walked back toward the building, Beatrice watched the trio, noting how the twins, always so insular, now seemed to have made room for a third. The envelope from the Kensington Foundation, still sitting on the kitchen table, suddenly felt like it held an even deeper promise. The late afternoon sun slanted through the dusty windows of Havenwood's common room, casting golden bars across the worn floorboards. Henry watched the twins play with his watch, their movements still a perfectly synchronized dance they seemed to have choreographed over a lifetime. It was then that Lily tilted her head, pointing out something on the watch face to her sister, and he saw it. There, partially hidden behind her left ear, was a small crescent-shaped birthmark. The world around Henry seemed to slow and fall silent, the sounds of the orphanage fading to a distant, muffled hum. San Francisco, 1992. "Look, honey," Catherine whispered, cradling baby Emily in her arms. "She has your mark." Her gentle fingers traced the tiny crescent behind the infant's ear, just like your mother had. Henry leaned over the crib, his heart swelling with a love so immense it was almost painful as he gazed at his newborn daughter. The birthmark, a trait passed down through the women in his family for generations, seemed to glow in the soft nursery light. "Mr. Kensington? Are you all right?" Beatrice's voice snapped him back to the present. He realized his hand was pressed against the wall for support, and his own hands were trembling. The twins were looking at him, their play forgotten, their faces etched with a child's open-hearted concern. "Beatrice," he managed, his voice thick, "we need to talk. In private." Beatrice nodded, sensing the profound shift in his demeanor. "Girls, why don't you go show the watch to Mrs. Martha? I'm sure she'll love to see the magical butterfly." The twins hesitated, but the ingrained habit of obedience won out. They rose in sync, still holding the watch as if it were a sacred relic, and quietly left the room. The moment the door clicked shut, Henry sank into a threadbare armchair. "The twins," he began, raking his fingers through his silver hair. "How did they get here?" Beatrice sat opposite him, her hands folded in her lap. "It was a rainy night 2 years ago. A social worker brought them. Said they'd been found abandoned at a train station in a nearby city. Was there any form of ID? Anything at all?" "Just a small backpack with some clothes and a teddy bear," Beatrice answered, her own concern mounting as she watched the color drain from Henry's face. "Mr. Kensington. Henry, what's going on?" "Catherine? Emily." The names echoed in the empty house, the note on the kitchen table, in his wife's unsteady script, read only, "I'm so sorry. I can't do this anymore." The baby's room was empty, the crib still perfectly made with its butterfly-themed sheets. Henry blinked hard, shoving away the memory that still felt like a physical assault. "My daughter," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Emily. She was 3 months old when she disappeared with my wife." Beatrice's hand flew to her mouth, the dawning realization in her eyes. I never found them," Henry continued, tears now tracking freely down his face. "The police said they'd probably left the country. Catherine had family in another place, but—" His voice broke. "I searched for years, hired private investigators. Nothing." A heavy silence filled the room, punctuated only by the distant ticking of a clock and the muffled shouts of children playing somewhere outside. "The mark," Henry finally said, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Behind Lily's ear. It's identical to Emily's. The same one I have. The one my mother had." Beatrice rose slowly and moved to the chair beside him. "Henry," she said softly, "you think that—" "I don't know," he interrupted, his voice trembling. I can't let myself hope without being sure. But that mark—" He took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to regain some semblance of control. "I need to investigate, discreetly, if there's even the slightest chance." A peal of delighted laughter echoed from down the hall, likely the twins showing the watch to someone. The sound was a sharp, sweet pain in Henry's chest. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said, getting to his feet on unsteady legs. "I promised them I'd return to see if their wish came true anyway." Beatrice walked him to the door, observing how his once imposing shoulders now seemed to carry an impossible weight. In the Rolls-Royce, Henry finally let the dam of his emotions break. Deep, wrenching sobs shook his frame as a lifetime of images blurred together. Baby Emily, Catherine rocking her, the empty house, the note, and now the twins, Lily and Daisy, with their green eyes so much like Catherine's, and that mark, that tiny crescent that had been a ghost in his dreams for decades. "To the hotel, sir?" the driver asked, his voice a model of discretion. Henry dried his eyes, taking one last look at the orphanage through the car's rear window. In the yard, two small figures in yellow dresses were waving shyly, still holding his watch between them. "No," he replied, his voice finding a new, raw determination. "To Sam Brody's office. Brody's, I have an investigation to start." As the car pulled away down the gravel drive, Henry instinctively touched the crescent-shaped birthmark behind his own ear. After 30 years of searching, had fate finally led him here? And if it was true, how could he ever explain to those little girls that their entire world was about to be turned upside down? The orphanage bell tolled in the distance, its sound carried on the wind like a promise of return. Henry closed his eyes, letting the tears flow. Tomorrow was another day, and perhaps the beginning of a new story, one that had started 3 decades ago with a devastating loss, and that now, by some impossible miracle, might be given a second chance. The presidential suite at the Grand Hotel felt suffocating that night, its vast, luxurious space doing nothing to ease the constriction in Henry's chest. He loosened his tie with trembling fingers, his jacket falling unheeded onto a leather armchair. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m., but sleep was an impossible thought. He poured a whiskey, the clinking of ice against crystal, a sharp, lonely sound. His eyes drifted to the open suitcase on the floor, lingering on the old leather briefcase he always traveled with. 20 minutes later, its contents were spread across the king-size bed. Family albums, yellow documents, newspaper clippings. Wilson Mansion, San Francisco, 2020. "You can't be serious." Emily's voice, sharp with anger, echoed in the mahogany-paneled dining room. Her green eyes, so much like her mother's, flashed. "I'm 25 now, Dad. You can't control my life anymore." "Control? I'm trying to protect you. That musician has nothing to offer but empty dreams and promises of tours in South America." "Cody is more than that. And you know it," Emily retorted, running a hand through her brown hair, a gesture she always made when she was frustrated. "He makes me happy. Why isn't that enough for you?" Henry returned to the present, his hand gripping the whiskey glass so tightly his knuckles were white. That night, that terrible, final night. How had he been so blind? How had he not seen that his daughter was truly in love? He picked up an album, its pages heavy with the ghosts of happier times. Emily as a child, grinning with a missing front tooth. Emily as a teen, proud in her tennis uniform. Emily at her Harvard graduation, a diploma in one hand and tears of joy in her eyes. "You're just like your mother," the words had spilled from his mouth, laced with a venom he hadn't intended. Always choosing the hardest path, always defying common sense. Emily's face had gone white. "Don't you dare mention her! You never got over her leaving, did you? And now you want to keep me here, as if I were her replacement." "Emily, No." She had stepped back, tears streaming down her face. "I'm done, Dad. Cody and I are going to Brazil next week. Don't try to stop me." A tear splashed onto the photograph in Henry's hand, and he realized he was weeping. In that last picture together, taken during a seemingly ordinary Sunday lunch, Emily smiled at the camera, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. And there it was, partially visible behind her ear, the little crescent birthmark. "If you walk out that door," he had said, his voice shaking with a toxic mix of anger and fear, "don't bother coming back." Emily paused, her hand on the doorknob. The silence that followed was a chasm. Then, without looking back, she said, "Goodbye, Dad." The sound of the glass shattering against the wall brought Henry back to the present. Shards of crystal and drops of whiskey marred the expensive wallpaper, but he didn't notice. His hand shook as he reached for the phone. "Sam Brody? I know it's late, but I need your services. It's about my daughter." He stood, walking to the panoramic window that overlooked the sleeping city. Somewhere out there, perhaps not so far away, two little girls were sleeping in their simple beds at Havenwood, unaware of the seismic shift their lives might be about to undergo. Yes, any information about Emily Kensington over the last 5 years, especially anything related to the country she traveled to. He paused, rubbing a hand over his exhausted face. "And I also need you to investigate a musician named Cody. I don't have his last name, but he must have traveled with her." As he listened to the response on the other end, his eyes fell on a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline announced the disappearance of Catherine and baby Emily 3 decades ago. Beside it, a more recent photo showed his adult daughter smiling at a charity event. "No, Sam. This time it's different." Henry touched his own birthmark, feeling his heart hammer against his ribs. "I think I found my granddaughters." The rest of the night was a long, slow torture. Henry remained awake, reliving every second of that argument, every cruel word, every missed opportunity to say "I'm sorry" or "I love you." The photographs scattered on the bed were a testament to a family fractured twice, first by Catherine's flight, then by Emily's. At 5 in the morning, as the first hints of dawn painted the horizon, Henry was still in the armchair, clutching the last photo he had of Emily. His fingers traced the outline of her face, so achingly similar to the twins. "Forgive me, daughter," he whispered into the silent room. "Please let me fix things." A new day was dawning, bringing with it the promise of answers and, perhaps, of redemption. In a few hours he would return to Havenwood as promised, but the visit now carried a different weight. It was no longer about philanthropy or 2 lonely children who had captured his imagination. It was about second chances. It was about family. It was about love. Henry stood and went to the bathroom to prepare. In the mirror, his bloodshot eyes and the new lines on his face told the story of his turmoil. But there was something else there, too, a steely resolve. "I'm going to find you, Emily," he promised his reflection. "And this time, I won't let you go." The sun finally broke over the horizon, flooding the room with golden light. Somewhere in the hotel, a phone began to ring. It was Sam Brody, with the first pieces of information. The search for the truth had begun. Sam Brody's office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise. Henry stared out at the waking city through the floor-to-ceiling windows while the detective examined the photos and documents spread across his mahogany desk. "So, these are the twins," Brody commented, adjusting his thin-rimmed glasses as he looked at the phone pictures Henry had discreetly taken. "The resemblance is remarkable, Mr. Kensington." Henry turned from the window, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on an untouched cup of coffee. "I need answers, Sam. Fast, if there's even a chance." "I'll begin immediately," Brody interrupted gently, his years of experience evident in his calm demeanor. "I have contacts who can track Emily's records of entry and movement. The musician's name, Cody, also gives us a starting point. And what about the twins? We'll work on multiple fronts: birth records, medical histories, the social worker who brought them to the orphanage," Brody said, making notes on his tablet. "But you must understand, Mr. Kensington, discretion is vital. If these girls are indeed your granddaughters, any sudden move could complicate the legal situation." Henry nodded, checking the watch that now held such a profound meaning. "I need to get back to the orphanage. I promised the girls." "Keep your routine," Brody agreed. "Leave the investigation to me. I'll call you the moment I have anything." The drive to Havenwood felt different that morning. Henry saw the lush Pacific Northwest scenery with new eyes, wondering if Emily had ever driven these same roads. The Rolls-Royce had barely come to a stop in the gravel courtyard when he heard the excited shouts of children. "He's back! The butterfly's back. Lily and Daisy ran to meet him, still in perfect sync, their pale blue dresses fluttering around them. Henry's heart constricted when he noticed that Daisy's smile was an exact replica of Emily's when she was a child. "Good morning, my little ones," he smiled, crouching to their level. "How's our magical friend?" The twins carefully held out the watch, which they had kept safe all night. "She danced in our dreams," Lily whispered. "She told us fairy tales," Daisy added, her green eyes shining in a way that made Henry swallow a lump in his throat. Beatrice watched them from the doorway, taking in the way Henry studied every tiny movement, how his eyes followed their gestures with an almost painful intensity. She approached the group slowly. "Mr. Kensington, it's good to see you again." "Beatrice." He straightened, regaining his composure. "Could we talk about those improvements we discussed yesterday?" In her office, Beatrice opened the envelope Henry handed her, her eyes widening at the figure on the check. "This is incredibly generous." "I want you to start with the yard," Henry said, his voice businesslike but underscored with emotion. "The children deserve a safe place to play. And maybe," he hesitated, "we can start with renovating the dorms as well. The twins' room has some particularly bad leaks," Beatrice mentioned casually, watching Henry's reaction. "Tell me more about when they arrived," he asked, striving for a casual tone. "It must have been a memorable night." Beatrice leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. It was pouring rain. Mrs. Martha had just made hot chocolate for the children. The social worker, Helen, I believe, looked exhausted. She said the girls were found in the central station, only with a purple backpack. "Purple?" Henry interrupted sharply. "With butterflies embroidered on it?" Beatrice's brow furrowed. "Yeah. How did you know?" Henry stood abruptly, walking to the window. Outside, the twins were playing with other children, though they still maintained their own little bubble. "Emily had one just like it," he murmured, almost to himself. "She took it everywhere in college." The rest of the day was a blur. Henry alternated between watching the twins and having seemingly casual conversations with the staff. Each new tidbit of information felt like another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. The way Lily wrinkled her nose when she smiled, identical to Emily. The way Daisy tilted her head when she was concentrating, a gesture his daughter had made constantly. By 5 in the afternoon, when the dinner bell rang, the twins reluctantly said their goodbyes. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Lily asked, holding one side of the watch. "To tell more stories?" Daisy added, holding the other. "Of course I will," he promised, fighting the overwhelming urge to pull them into a hug. The butterfly still has plenty of secrets to share. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away, Beatrice watched from her office window. Something was happening here, something much bigger than simple charity. The way Henry looked at the twins, the slight tremor in his hands when they were near, the way his eyes would brim with unshed tears as he watched them play. Her phone buzzed in her pocket just as the car disappeared. "Mr. Kensington?" Sam Brody's voice was urgent. "We've found something. The social worker, Helen Martinez, has been located. And there's more. We discovered records of an Emily Kensington entering the country 5 years ago, accompanied by a musician named Cody Miller." Henry felt his heart stop for a beat. And then they settled in the city for a while. Emily taught English for some time. Then, about 3 years ago, she appears in a private hospital's records. In the maternity ward. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Henry gripped the phone tighter. "Go on." "Mr. Kensington," Brody paused dramatically. She gave birth to twins. Sam Brody spread a series of photographs and documents across his office desk. Dawn was just beginning to streak the sky, but Henry was already there, his eyes red from another sleepless night. "Emily arrived in this country in September 2020, Brody began, pointing to an immigration record with Cody Miller. They first settled in a smaller town where his band had some gigs. Henry picked up a faded photo of a bar. On a makeshift stage, a group of musicians played, and among them he recognized the man his daughter had chosen. Dark hair, a guitar in hand, an easy smile. "It's called the Cozy Corner," Brody explained. Emily taught English during the day and helped at the bar at night. Employees loved her. They said she sang all the time while she worked. "Stop it, Dad!" A teenage Emily laughed, dancing around the kitchen. "My voice isn't that bad." "Worse," Henry had teased, pretending to cover his ears as she hummed a Beatles tune. "Mr. Kensington?" Brody's voice brought him back. "You all right?" "Go on," Henry muttered, his throat tight. They stayed in that town for 8 months. After that, they followed the band's gigs, moving from one city to another. Emily found work in every place, English schools, cafes, even a bookstore. Henry studied the employment records, his heart heavy. Emily, a Harvard graduate, serving tables and giving private lessons. His princess, who could have been a vice president at Kensington Enterprises, living a nomadic life. In the capital, things changed, Brody continued, his tone growing somber. The band got a more stable contract, and Emily began working at an international school. It looked like they were finally settling down. Then what? "Cody died," Brody said, sliding a newspaper clipping across the desk. "A motorcycle accident." Emily was 4 months pregnant. Henry closed his eyes, a wave of sickness washing over him. His daughter, alone, pregnant, in a foreign country, and he had been completely oblivious. "She moved to a smaller town after that," Brody went on softly. "Got a job at a local school. The twins were born there. And then?" Henry could barely form the words. "The trail gets murky. There are records placing her in a town about 30 miles from the orphanage, about 3 years ago. She worked in a cafe called the Tulip." Henry stood suddenly. "I want to go there. Right now." The Tulip was a small, cozy place with rustic wooden tables and the persistent aroma of freshly ground coffee. The owner, a gray-haired woman named Mrs. Carmen, recognized Emily's photo immediately. Oh, Emily, such a sweet girl. Her eyes lit up with recognition. She arrived here with 2 beautiful baby girls, identical. Worked hard, you know, always smiling, always singing to the little ones. "What happened to her?" Henry asked, his voice trembling. "She stayed here for about 3 months. Then—" "Well, she seemed worried about something, or someone." Mrs. Carmen frowned, trying to recall. "One day, she just didn't show up for work. Left only a thank-you note. Never saw her again." Henry returned to the car, the weight of every new revelation pressing down on him. Emily had been so close, fighting, surviving, raising her daughters alone. And where had he been? Walled up in his mansion in Seattle, too bitter to even try to find her. Later that afternoon, he returned to Havenwood. Lily and Daisy were playing in the newly renovated yard, their laughter echoing through the air. He watched them with new eyes, seeing Emily in every gesture, every expression. "Grandpa Henry," they shouted in unison when they saw him, and the name, so casually uttered, nearly stopped his heart. It was the first time they'd called him that, likely just mimicking what other children called older visitors, but the title struck him like lightning. "Look what we drew." Lily held out a piece of paper covered in colorful butterflies. "They're magical, like the one on your watch," Daisy explained, her green eyes, Emily's eyes, gleaming. Henry knelt on the grass, ignoring the cost of his Italian suit, and let the girls show him every detail. Each butterfly had a story, each color a special meaning. "Our mom liked butterflies too," Lily said casually, and Henry froze. "Yeah?" Daisy agreed. She always said they were messengers of magic. "Do you remember her?" Henry asked softly, his heart hammering. The twins exchanged that silent, knowing look that was so natural to them. "Sometimes," Lily whispered, "when we sleep." "She used to sing," Daisy added, "always singing. 'Here comes the sun,'" Henry finished in a whisper. The girl's eyes widened. "You know it?" "Yes," he replied, tears now streaming unchecked down his cheeks. "Yes, I do." That night, after leaving the orphanage, Henry spent hours in his hotel room, piecing together the fragments of Emily's journey. It was a story of courage, resilience, and love. His daughter, fighting to survive, to protect her babies, to build a life far from the suffocating control he had once tried to exert. His phone rang just before midnight. It was Brody. "I found the social worker, Helen. She's agreed to meet us tomorrow." A pause. "Mr. Kensington, she says she has something important to tell us. Something about the night she dropped off the twins at the orphanage." Henry looked at the butterfly drawing the girls had given him, now taped to the hotel wall. "Tomorrow, then," he answered, a new resolve in his voice. "I'm going to find out what happened to you, Emily, and I'm going to fix it all. I promise." The meeting room at Mercy Hospital felt too small, the air thick with the weight of unspoken words. Henry sat rigidly on a plastic chair while Sam Brody reviewed medical records with the hospital's chief administrator, Dr. Beatrice Miller. "The records confirm," Dr. Miller said softly, adjusting her glasses. Emily Kensington was admitted on March 15, 2022, presenting with severe complications in her twin pregnancy. Henry took the folder she handed him, his hands trembling. The photo of Emily in the medical file was a gut punch. Her face was thinner, but her eyes, the same green eyes he now saw in Lily and Daisy, still held a spark of defiance. "She arrived alone," the doctor continued, her professional tone a thin veil over her compassion. "She'd been staying at a nearby boarding house. The owner brought her here when she started having seizures." "Dad," Emily's voice echoed in his memory from that last terrible phone call 5 years ago. "I know you don't approve of my choices, but—" He had hung up. He had simply hung up. "Mr. Kensington?" Sam Brody touched his shoulder gently. "Do you want to take a break?" Henry shook his head, swallowing the hard lump in his throat. "Keep going." Dr. Miller opened another file on her computer. Emily developed severe preeclampsia. "We tried to stabilize her, but—" She paused, choosing her words with care. The twins had to be delivered prematurely. The next pages of the medical report were a blur. Words like hemorrhage, postpartum complications, and cardiac arrest leaped off the page like accusations. "She?" Henry couldn't finish the sentence. "Emily held on long enough to see her daughters," Dr. Miller said softly. "She named them Lily and Daisy. She got to hold them for a few minutes. And then—" Henry stood abruptly, staggering to the window. Outside, life went on. Doctors hurried across the parking lot. Families entered and exited. Ambulances arrived with sirens wailing. How could the world keep turning when his daughter, when Emily— The babies were in the neonatal ICU for 2 weeks. The doctor's voice seemed to come from a great distance. They were small, but strong, like their mother. "There was a letter," Sam Brody added gently. Emily left it with the head nurse, in case something happened. A yellowed envelope was placed on the table. Henry instantly recognized Emily's handwriting, the same script that had once left "I love you" notes in his office when she was a child. "Dear Dad, if you're reading this, it means I wasn't strong enough. I'm so sorry for everything, for the years of silence, for my stubbornness, for not coming back when Cody died. My daughters will need you now. I know you still have love to give, Dad. I saw it even in our hardest moments. Please, find them. Take care of them. Love them like you loved me. They're special, Dad. Lily has that same birthmark, you know, the one that runs in our family. And Daisy, she wrinkles her nose exactly like Mom used to when she smiles. Forgive me for not being the daughter you wanted, but know that even in the hardest moments, I never stopped loving you. Emily." Tears fell freely now, staining the fragile paper. Henry barely registered Dr. Miller explaining how the system had eventually placed the twins in Havenwood, how officials had tried and failed to locate any next of kin. Mr. Kensington, Brody brought him back to the present. There's something else you need to see. A hospital security video began to play on Dr. Miller's computer. The date was from 3 years ago. In the black and white footage, Emily sat in a wheelchair in the hospital's garden, her hands resting protectively on her prominent belly. She was humming something, her face serene despite the clear signs of exhaustion. "The audio is poor," the doctor commented, but the nurse said it was always the same song. "Here comes the sun," Henry whispered. The same song he used to sing to her at bedtime, the same song the twins had mentioned. The rest of the day was a haze. Henry wandered the hospital corridors, stopping in the garden where Emily had sat. He sat on the same bench, picturing his daughter there, alone, carrying her babies, singing to them until the very end. When he finally returned to Havenwood, the sun was setting. Lily and Daisy were playing on the new playground his donation had funded, their laughter like music. "Grandpa Henry," they shouted when they saw him, running to him. This time, Henry couldn't hold back. He sank to his knees and pulled them into a fierce embrace, burying his face in their hair, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Tell us another story about the magical butterfly," Lily asked. "The one about finding your way home," Daisy chimed in. Henry held their small hands, feeling the weight of 3 generations of love, loss, and redemption. "Of course, my little ones," he replied, his voice breaking. "I'll tell you all the stories in the world." That night, sitting in his hotel room, Henry reread Emily's letter dozens of times. Each word was both a knife and a balm. His daughter had forgiven him. She had trusted him. He picked up the phone, dialing a familiar number. "Elena Carter? This is Henry Kensington. I need you to prepare all the paperwork for an adoption process." "Yes, I've found my granddaughters." And this time, he looked at Emily's photo in his wallet. "This time, I'm not going to miss a single precious moment." Outside, the moon shone over the sleeping city, and somewhere, Henry was certain, Emily was smiling. The sun had barely risen when Henry arrived at Havenwood the next morning. He sat on a bench in the newly renovated yard, watching the dew glisten on the grass. In his hands, an old photo album felt as heavy as a gravestone. "Dad, look, I did it." A 5-year-old Emily pedaled her first bike without training wheels, her brown hair flying, her smile a supernova of pride. "I see you, princess. You're amazing." The sound of small footsteps brought him back. Lily and Daisy were crossing the yard toward the dining hall, their pigtails swinging in perfect unison. When they saw him, their faces lit up. "Grandpa Henry!" they exclaimed, running to him. "Did you come to have breakfast with us?" His heart seized at the title they had so naturally adopted. If only they knew how right they were. "Of course I did," he answered, discreetly tucking the album away. "If Mrs. Martha doesn't mind, of course." In the bustling dining hall, Henry watched the twins eat their cereal. Lily meticulously separated the colorful fruit bits, just like Emily used to. Daisy blew on her hot milk with the same focused expression his daughter had when she was studying. "Dad, you're overreacting." A teenage Emily rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "It's just a sleepover." "You can never be too cautious about my princess's safety," he'd reply, triple-checking the emergency numbers. "Grandpa Henry?" Daisy's small voice cut through his thoughts. Why are you crying?" He hadn't realized tears were tracing paths down his cheeks. "Sometimes," he said softly, "grown-ups cry when they're happy, too." Beatrice watched from the doorway, concern creasing her brow. After breakfast, as the girls headed to their lessons, she called Henry into her office. "Mr. Kensington," she began hesitantly, "I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time here, especially with the twins." Henry took a deep breath. It was time. "Beatrice," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I need to tell you something. Something about my daughter, Emily." Over the next 2 hours, Henry laid his life bare. He spoke of their last fight, of the years of silence, of the devastating discovery at the hospital. He showed her Emily's letter, his hands shaking as he passed her the paper, worn from being read and reread. "Oh, my God," Beatrice whispered, her own eyes filling with tears. "So they're my granddaughters," Henry finished, his voice cracking. "My only granddaughters. And I didn't even know they existed until now." Beatrice stood and walked to the window. Outside, the twins were playing during recess, their identical dresses fluttering in the breeze. "They sing," she said softly, "every night before bed, always the same song." "Here comes the sun," Henry murmured, a sob catching in his throat. "Dad, this song is ours," a 6-year-old Emily had declared seriously. "Promise it will always be our song. I promise, Princess. Forever." "I want to adopt them," Henry declared, his voice gaining strength. "Give them the home Emily wanted them to have. The family that she—" His voice faltered, and Beatrice placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Henry," she said gently, using his first name for the first time, "it's not that simple. There are legal procedures, psychological evaluations, adjustment periods." "I'll do whatever it takes," he interrupted, his voice firm. "I've lost too much time already. I lost Emily. I'm not going to lose another moment with them." A shout of delight carried through the window. Lily had just managed a cartwheel on the lawn, with Daisy applauding enthusiastically. "Look at them," Henry whispered, more to himself than to Beatrice. "They're so full of life, of joy, even after everything they've been through, just like Emily. You can't control everything, Dad." Emily's last words echoed in his mind. "Life isn't one of your companies." "I won't make the same mistakes," he said aloud. "This time will be different." Beatrice sighed, pulling a folder from her drawer. "I'll give you the contacts for the social workers assigned to their case." "But, Henry," she hesitated, "you have to be sure. These girls have already lost so much. They can't lose anyone else." Henry nodded, his eyes fixed on the twins. Lily was now trying to teach Daisy how to do a cartwheel, their giggles mingling with the birdsong. "Emily asked me to take care of them," he said, touching the pocket where he kept her letter. It was her last wish, her final act of love and forgiveness. That afternoon, sitting on the new swing set with a twin on each side, Henry listened as they told him about their day. "And then the teacher said, 'I drew the prettiest clouds in class,'" Lily exclaimed. "But my trees got gold stars," Daisy added. "Dad, look, I got an A in art." A younger Emily, beaming as she showed off a family portrait. "The teacher said I have talent. You are both very talented," Henry smiled, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Just like—" He stopped, realizing he had nearly said too much. But the girls didn't notice, already distracted by a flutter of butterflies passing by. "Grandpa Henry?" Lily asked suddenly, her voice serious. "You'll keep coming back, right?" "Forever?" Daisy added, her eyes, Emily's eyes, locked on his. Henry felt his heart break and mend all at once. "Yes, my little ones," he promised, his voice steady despite the tears. "I'll always be here. Always." That night, after the twins were asleep, Henry remained in the orphanage yard, watching the stars appear. The photo album lay open on his lap, the last picture of him and Emily reflecting the moonlight. "Forgive me, daughter," he whispered to the night. "Forgive this foolish old man who took so long to realize what truly matters." A soft breeze ruffled the album's pages, and for a moment Henry could have sworn he heard Emily's laughter on the wind. Inside, through an open dorm window, the twins' voices drifted softly. "Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do." Henry smiled through his tears. Perhaps some songs really were meant to echo across generations. Perhaps some stories truly deserved a second chance. Taking out his phone, he typed a message to his lawyer, Elena Carter. "Begin the adoption process. I'm ready." The stars seemed to shine brighter then, as if in approval. And somewhere, Henry was sure, Emily was smiling too. Elena Carter's family law office was quiet, save for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Henry watched as she studied the DNA test results, her experienced eyes scanning the columns of numbers and graphs that confirmed what his heart already knew. 99.99% certainty, she announced, adjusting her glasses. Lily and Daisy are, without a doubt, your biological granddaughters. Henry closed his eyes, letting the scientific finality wash over him. The discreet test, hair samples collected during a playtime, had cemented his emotional certainty into documented fact. Now what? His voice was rough in the quiet room. Now we start the real work, Elena replied, opening a thick folder. Grandparent adoptions have their nuances. We'll need to prove your financial capacity, emotional stability, and the suitability of the home environment. Henry nodded, his mind drifting to the Kensington mansion overlooking Puget Sound, which was already undergoing major renovations. Emily's old room, untouched for 5 years, was being transformed. This shade of pink is perfect. A teenage Emily supervising the painting of her room. Dad, you have to admit I was right. As always, Princess, he'd smiled, pretending not to notice the paint specks on his expensive suit. Mr. Kensington? Elena's voice brought him back. Are you listening? Sorry, he murmured, adjusting his tie. I was just remembering. Later that day, in his first meeting with Dr. Paula Adams, a therapist recommended by Elena, Henry confronted his deepest fears. What if I fail them like I failed Emily? He whispered. What if my excessive control, my rigidity? Henry, Paula interrupted kindly, the very fact that you're here, acknowledging these patterns, already shows a fundamental difference. At Havenwood, subtle but profound shifts were occurring. Lily, usually the more reserved of the two, now ran to him the moment he arrived. Daisy had started saving special drawings just for him. Look, Grandpa Henry, Daisy announced one afternoon, holding out a colorful picture. It's our family of butterflies. Henry studied the paper, his heart clenching. 3 large butterflies and 2 small ones, all holding hands, or wings. That's you, Mommy, Grandma, and me and Lily, she explained, pointing to each figure. How do you know about Mommy and Grandma? Henry asked carefully. We dream, Lily replied, joining them. They sing to us when we sleep. In Seattle, the Kensington mansion was transforming. Henry personally oversaw every detail, determined to create a space that was both a sanctuary and a wonderland. The walls in their room will be pastel, he explained to the decorator, and I want a butterfly mural here. No, more colorful. They love color. The closets that once held Italian suits now made way for tiny dresses and shoes. The austere library gained a whole section of children's books. The pristine garden now had hidden nooks for play. Mr. Kensington, his butler Walter, remarked one day, watching him personally install a swing set. I've never seen you so involved in a project. Henry paused, wiping sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. Another thing the old Henry Kensington would never do. This time it has to be perfect, Walter. They deserve perfect. During therapy, more fears emerged. What if they hate me when they learn the whole truth? Henry's voice trembled. When they realize I could have prevented it if I hadn't been so proud? Children have an extraordinary capacity for forgiveness, Dr. Paula reassured him, especially when they feel real love. At Havenwood, Beatrice noticed the changes in the twins. They still had their private world, but that world now had a permanent resident. You know what Lily told me yesterday? Beatrice shared with Henry during a visit. That for the first time since they arrived, they didn't dream of their mother crying. They dreamed of her smiling. Henry's heart ached with a sweet, painful joy. And it's good, Henry, Beatrice smiled. Very good. Weeks turned into months. The adoption paperwork ground slowly through the legal system. Henry divided his time between Seattle and the orphanage, redrawing the map of his life around his granddaughters. One night, sitting in his home office, he read the latest report from the therapist. Mr. Kensington demonstrates remarkable progress in his healing process and preparation for grandfatherhood. His dedication to the twins is evident, as is his commitment not to repeat past patterns. I strongly recommend continuing the adoption process. Next to the report lay a new drawing from the twins, a large house with butterflies all around. 3 figures holding hands in the garden. "A new house?" he'd asked when they gave it to him. "No," Lily replied, with that inexplicable wisdom children sometimes possess. "It's an old house. New family." Henry picked up his phone, dialing Elena's number. "I'm ready," he said simply. "Let's finalize the adoption." That night, standing in the doorway of the newly decorated twins' room, Henry let himself imagine the future. Noisy mornings filled with laughter, afternoons spent doing homework, nights telling bedtime stories. "You were always good at telling stories, Dad," Emily's voice in his memory. "You just need to learn to listen to other people's stories, too." "I'm learning, daughter," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm finally learning." On his desk, the adoption paperwork awaited his final signatures. Beside it, a newly framed photo of him and the twins in the Havenwood playground, all 3 smiling. In the reflection of the window behind them, one might almost see a 4th figure, smiling as well. But perhaps it was just the afternoon sun. Or maybe, Henry thought, it was Emily silently approving of the new chapter about to begin. The family court building was bustling on that Monday morning. Henry adjusted his tie, the gravity of the moment settling on him as he walked the marble halls toward Judge Carmen Rogers's office. In his briefcase, the documents that would grant him official custody of Lily and Daisy seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "Mr. Kensington," the judge greeted him, her experienced eyes assessing him over gold-rimmed glasses. "I'll admit, your case intrigues me. It's not every day a millionaire CEO decides to adopt 2 3-year-old children." "They're my granddaughters, Your Honor," Henry replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Emily's daughters. The next hour was a forensic examination of his life. Every decision, every choice, every moment of his fraught relationship with Emily was laid bare. "You acknowledge," the judge asked at one point, "that your history of controlling behavior toward your daughter raises some concerns?" Henry felt the sting but did not flinch. "I do, Your Honor. That's why I've been in therapy for months, to understand my mistakes and avoid repeating them." Back at Havenwood, meanwhile, Dr. Mary Peabody, the court-appointed psychologist, conducted her first session with the twins. The playroom was her temporary office, with paper and crayons spread on a low table. "Tell me about Grandpa Henry," she asked softly. "He has a magical butterfly," Lily responded, without looking up from her drawing. "That tells stories," Daisy added, carefully selecting a blue crayon. "And how do you feel when he's around?" The twins exchanged a synchronized glance. "Safe," they answered in unison. In the next room, Beatrice waited for her turn. When called, her voice trembled with emotion as she described the transformation she had witnessed. "At first I was wary," she admitted, "but seeing how he interacts with them, how he cares not just about their physical well-being, but their feelings, their fears, their dreams, it's as if Henry Kensington has become a completely different person." The morning stretched on, filled with more interviews. Henry provided endless documents on his financial status and future plans. "You understand," Dr. Richard Adams, the social worker, explained, "that raising 2 small children will require significant changes to your routine." "I've already started making those changes," Henry replied, showing photos of the renovated mansion. "I'm gradually stepping back from day-to-day leadership at Kensington Enterprises. My priority now is Lily and Daisy." As the sun began to set, the first day of evaluations ended. Henry was drained, but he had one more stop. Back at Havenwood, he found the twins in the garden, blowing soap bubbles that shimmered in the dusk. They ran to him, their laughter a balm to his frayed nerves. "Grandpa Henry, look what we did today." They pulled him into the art room, where two identical paintings were drying. A big house, a garden full of butterflies, and three figures holding hands. One big, two small. "It's our family," Lily explained. "The doctor asked us to draw our favorite place," Daisy added. Henry felt tears welling. "It's beautiful, my little ones, absolutely beautiful." That evening, driving back to the hotel, his phone rang. It was Elena. "Henry, we have a problem. A reporter got wind of the adoption process. It's on the front page of the Morning Ledger's website." He sighed, anticipating the headlines. "Billionaire Henry Kensington seeks controversial adoption, dark past of tech magnate and missing daughter." "Take care of it, Elena," he ordered, slipping momentarily back into his old CEO persona. "Do whatever it takes to protect the girl's privacy." In his hotel room, he reviewed the day. The muted TV showed headlines about him. His phone buzzed with requests for comment. He pulled out the latest photo of the twins, their matching smiles a reminder of what truly mattered. "The press will be relentless," Elena had warned. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" "They're all I have left of Emily," he'd replied. "My chance to make things right." His phone buzzed again. A message from Beatrice with a video attached. Lily and Daisy getting ready for bed, their sweet voices filling the silent hotel room. "Here comes the sun. Do. Henry smiled through his tears. The song, a bridge across 3 generations. The next morning, he would face more scrutiny. The press would continue to speculate. None of it mattered. What mattered were 2 3-year-old girls who had, through a series of tragic and miraculous events, given him a second chance to be the family Emily always wanted. He picked up his phone one last time, sending a message to Elena. "Set up a press conference for tomorrow. I'm going to tell our story. On my terms. The way Emily would want." Somewhere between wakefulness and sleep, Henry could have sworn he heard his daughter's laughter mixed with the distant flutter of butterfly wings. And for the first time in years, he slept peacefully, knowing he was finally on the right path. A picture of the twins lay on his bedside table, their smiles illuminated by the soft lamp glow. Next to it, a new edition, the last photo he had taken with Emily, now restored and framed. Mother and daughters, separated by time and tragedy, bound by the same smile, the same brightness in their eyes, the same infinite capacity for love and forgiveness. "Good night, my little ones," he whispered to the quiet room. "Good night, Emily. Tomorrow will be a new day. And this time, I'll get it right. I promise." Henry's hotel office was a sea of paperwork, adoption forms, medical records, psychological evaluations. Every sheet represented another step toward Lily and Daisy. While organizing a new pile of documents Elena had brought, his hands brushed against something different, a slightly yellowed manila envelope with his name written in Emily's unmistakable script. "Elena," he called, his voice shaking, "where did this come from?" The lawyer adjusted her glasses, examining the envelope. It was among the hospital documents. Apparently, Emily left it with her medical files. With trembling fingers, Henry opened the envelope. The faint scent of lavender, Emily's favorite, still clung to the carefully folded pages. "Dear Dad, if you're reading this, it means my concerns came true. The doctors say this is a high-risk pregnancy, and though I'm fighting with all my strength, I have to be prepared for every possibility. First, I need you to know I forgive you. I forgive you for our fight, for all the harsh words, for all the expectations that weighed on both of us. And I ask you to forgive me, too, for leaving the way I did, for the long silence, for not being strong enough to make the first move toward reconciliation." Henry had to pause, his tears staining the paper. Through the window, the afternoon sun painted the Seattle sky in shades of pink and gold, colors Emily had always loved. Cody died 3 months ago. It was so sudden, so brutal, a motorcycle accident on his way to a gig. He never knew they were twins. He used to joke he wanted a whole band of little musicians, but he'd be happy with any melody life gave us. The girls are special, Dad. The doctors can already tell. They're identical, but there's more to it. They have a connection that goes beyond the physical. Sometimes, when one moves during an ultrasound, the other reacts instantly. It's like they already have their own secret language. The letter detailed important medical points. Lily would be born with a minor heart condition requiring follow-ups. Daisy was prone to allergies. Both showed early signs of synesthesia, the ability to see sounds as colors, something Emily had also experienced. There's so much I want to say, so many requests, but the most important is this. If anything happens to me, I want you to raise my daughters. I know it may feel cruel after everything, but you're the only person I trust to give them the love, education, and chances they deserve. But please, Dad, learn from our mistakes. Let them be who they're meant to be. Lily's already showing signs of being the dreamer. She reacts more intensely to music in the exams. Daisy is the protector. She always shifts like a shield around her sister in the ultrasounds. Henry glanced at the recent photos of the twins. How could Emily have known them so perfectly before they were even born? I have a few specific requests. 1. Keep them together, always. Their bond is special and vital. 2. Encourage their music, not as an obligation, but as a form of expression. Tell them about Cody, about his talent, his kindness, his love for life. Most importantly, tell them about our mistakes, about how pride and stubbornness can cost too much. There's a bank account in their names at National Bank. It's not much, but I saved every penny from my jobs as a teacher. The password is the date of our last Christmas together. Remember when we sang Beatles songs into the night, and you finally admitted, "Hey Jude" was better than Mozart? The tears now flowed freely. Of course he remembered. It was the last time he'd seen Emily truly happy in his presence. The girls kick a lot whenever I play guitar, the letter continued. Cody left his guitar for them. It's at Mrs. Carmen's place at the Tulip, along with some tapes we recorded together. Please retrieve it. It's part of their heritage. Dad, I know you're probably wondering why I never came back, why I never told you about the pregnancy. The truth is, I was afraid. Not of you, but of myself. Of not being strong enough to keep my independence, of giving in to the pressure and expectations again. Now I see that fear cost us precious time. But maybe the universe had a bigger plan. Maybe my daughters are the bridge we needed, the chance to heal old wounds and build something beautiful from our broken pieces. He had to pause again, his hands shaking too much to hold the paper. He stood and walked to the window. In the distance he could see Havenwood's courtyard, and in it 2 small figures running in perfect sync. There's one last thing you need to know. Despite it all, I never stopped loving you. You were, and are, my father. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who scared away monsters from my closet, who sang "Here Comes the Sun" on stormy nights. If you're reading this, it means I didn't survive to raise my daughters. But it also means they have the chance to meet the Grandpa Henry I knew in my childhood, the one who put love above expectations, hugs above achievements. Please, Dad, love them for both of us. Teach them to fly, but be there to catch them when they fall. Show them that family isn't about perfection, it's about forgiveness and new beginnings. With all my love, Emily. P.S. The butterflies in the mansion's garden, never uproot them. Cody planted them especially for me, saying they were symbols of transformation. Now I see he was right. Sometimes we have to break completely inside our cocoons before we can fly. Henry stood motionless for several minutes. The sun had set completely, and the first stars were pricking the night sky. With trembling hands, he picked up his phone. "Beatrice? I need you to watch the girls for an extra hour today. There's something I have to do." He drove to the Tulip Cafe, finding Mrs. Carmen closing up. "The guitar," he said simply. Cody's guitar. The older woman smiled as though she'd been expecting him. From the back of the shop, she brought out a worn leather case. Inside was a classical guitar with a butterfly design, along with several cassette tapes. Back at the hotel, Henry listened to every tape. Emily's voice blended with Cody's in songs of love and hope. In some recordings, you could hear Emily laughing, talking about her babies. On the last tape, she had left a message. "Dad, if you're listening to this, thank you for loving my girls. Thank you for being the father I always knew you could be." Henry fell asleep on the office sofa, holding Emily's testament in one hand and a photo of the twins in the other. He felt, for the first time, completely at peace. His daughter had forgiven him. More, she had entrusted him with her most precious treasure. Tomorrow he would share her words with his legal team, but tonight was for remembering, grieving, and healing. Outside, in the hotel's small garden, a blue butterfly briefly perched on the window, its wings glimmering in the moonlight before it took flight toward the stars. The courtroom was hushed as Dr. Regina Summers, the court-appointed psychologist, presented her preliminary report. Henry sat upright, each word an echo of his deepest fears. While Mr. Kensington shows genuine affection for the children, she paused, adjusting her glasses. His history with his late daughter Emily raises significant concerns. The pattern of controlling behavior. Henry closed his eyes, remembering Emily's words. How could he explain that the man he used to be no longer existed? That every moment with Lily and Daisy chipped away at that old, rigid facade. "Your Honor," Elena intervened, standing. "I'd like to introduce new documents into evidence. Emily Kensington's testament, explicitly stating her wish for her father to raise the girls." Meanwhile, back at Havenwood, Beatrice was leading a delicate session with the twins, following the psychologist's guidance. "Your mommy," Beatrice explained gently, showing them a photo of a younger Emily, "was very special. And do you know who this man next to her is?" "Grandpa Henry," Lily exclaimed, her eyes shining. "Younger," Daisy noted, tilting her head in that Emily-like way. Outside the orphanage, reporters gathered. The story of the billionaire seeking redemption had captured the public's imagination. "Mr. Kensington," a reporter called out as Henry arrived for his daily visit. "What's your response to claims that your advanced age will keep you from adequately caring for 2 young children?" Henry ignored the cameras, but the question lingered. At 60, would he have the energy? The answer came unexpectedly during snack time. Lily spilled her juice, and before any adult could react, Henry was on the floor, cleaning the mess and comforting the tearful girl. "Don't cry, sweetheart," he whispered, the same way he used to comfort Emily. "Accidents happen." "You're not mad?" Daisy asked, kneeling beside her sister. "Of course not. That's what family is for. To help when we spill juice, to hug when we cry, to laugh when we make a mess." From the doorway, Beatrice watched, making mental notes for her report. These were the moments official documents couldn't capture. At the next court session, the Havenwood community rallied. Mrs. Martha spoke of how the twins now sang during meals. The art teacher showed drawings where the girls always depicted themselves holding hands with Grandpa Henry. Even the gardener testified about the butterflies that now frequented the yard. But the most important thing, Beatrice concluded in her testimony, is how the girls blossom in his presence. It's not just love, it's healing. 3 generations finding peace through forgiveness and new beginnings. The challenges, however, remained. Henry faced lengthy meetings, explaining how he would adapt his life. He showed them the bedroom he had prepared, now adorned with hand-painted butterflies. He revealed the new children's section in the library, the swings in the garden, the music area with 2 small guitars. Emily asked that music be part of their lives, he explained, showing them the tapes left by Cody. Not as an obligation, but as a legacy of love. Weeks rolled into months. Their bond strengthened. They now knew fragments of their story, adapted for their young minds. They knew their mom was an angel who sang to them from above, and their dad played guitar among the butterflies. "What about Grandpa Henry?" a social worker asked during an evaluation. "He keeps our smiles," Lily said. "And scares away our fears," Daisy added. On the eve of the final decision, Henry found the girls unusually quiet. "What's wrong, my little ones?" he asked, sitting between them on the swing set. "Ms. Beatrice said, 'Tomorrow's important,'" Lily began. "There's a judge who's going to decide—" Daisy hesitated. "If we can be a real family," they finished together. Henry felt his heart tighten. How to explain this to two 3-year-olds? "You know what I think?" he said after a moment. "I think we already are a family. Right here," he pointed to his heart. "Where it counts? The judge will just put that on paper." The twins smiled, snuggling against him. Above them, a blue butterfly, identical to the one on the magical watch, briefly perched on the swing before fluttering off into the orange sky. That night, Henry reread Emily's testament one last time. Tomorrow, he would find out if he could honor her final wish. "Help me, daughter," he whispered to Emily's photo. "Help me be the father you always knew I could be." Outside, the city settled under a starry sky, and somewhere between waking and sleeping, Henry could have sworn he heard a familiar voice singing softly, "Here comes the sun. Do, 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 do." Morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of the family court, painting the floor in gentle hues as Judge Carmen Rogers signed the final adoption papers. Henry, wearing his best suit, personally chosen by Lily and Daisy, kept one hand on Emily's testament, now part of the official record. "By the power vested in me by the law," the judge announced, a mild smile on her lips, "I hereby declare Henry Kensington the legal guardian of Lily and Daisy Kensington." The twins, in pale blue dresses embroidered with tiny butterflies, squeezed each other's hands, their green eyes, Emily's eyes, shining with a mix of excitement and wonder. Henry stood, his voice trembling as he addressed the small group. "Emily, my daughter, wrote something I'd like to share today," he said, carefully unfolding a page. She wrote, "Family isn't about perfection, but about forgiveness and new beginnings. Today, thanks to her love and insight, we're getting our new beginning. Back at Havenwood, the farewell was bittersweet." Beatrice organized a small celebration in the courtyard where butterflies danced among newly planted flowers. "You'll always have a place here," Beatrice said, hugging them, "and you can visit whenever you want." "Promise, Ms. Beatrice?" Lily asked. "You won't forget us?" Daisy added. "How could I?" Beatrice smiled through tears. "You've changed this place as much as it changed you." Mrs. Martha arrived with a butterfly-themed cake, and soon the courtyard was filled with laughter and music. Henry watched the girls say goodbye to their friends, his heart overflowing. "Let them be who they're meant to be," Emily's words echoed. Moving into the Kensington mansion was an adventure. The twins roamed every room, their synchronized footsteps echoing through hallways that had once been so quiet. "Lily, look!" Daisy exclaimed upon discovering their bedroom. "The butterflies look like they're dancing." The mural Henry had commissioned covered an entire wall, butterflies in shades of blue and gold that seemed alive. 2 beds, side by side, just like at Havenwood, but with quilts embroidered with their names. And in a special corner, guitars. "Just like Daddy's," Daisy whispered, gently brushing the strings. The days turned into weeks, and a new routine took shape. Mornings started with special breakfasts from Walter, who discovered a surprising knack for making butterfly-shaped pancakes. Afternoons were for music lessons, garden games, and endless stories. Henry discovered each twin had her own way of seeking comfort. Lily curled up in his lap during storms, while Daisy preferred holding his hand and telling her sister stories. One evening, he found them asleep over an old photo album of Emily's. "Mommy was so pretty," Lily had said earlier, pointing to a photo of teenage Emily. "And her smile looks just like ours," Daisy had noted. "Yes," Henry agreed softly, and she loved you more than anything in the world. The music lessons became a special time. Within a few months, the twins could play simple notes, their small hands determined to honor their parents' legacy. "Grandpa Henry," Lily called one night as he tucked them in, "tell us the story of the magical butterfly again." "The one that sends messages to the sky," Daisy added, her eyes heavy. Henry smiled, picking up the watch that now rested on the nightstand between them. The blue butterfly still performed its eternal dance. "Once upon a time," he began, "there was a very special butterfly tasked with carrying love between heaven and earth." As usual, the girls fell asleep before the story ended. Henry sat between their beds, watching their synchronized breathing, marveling at the miracle Emily had given him. On the windowsill, Cody's guitar rested, its strings occasionally vibrating with the night breeze. The tapes he and Emily had recorded were now part of the girls' nightly routine, her gentle voice lulling them to sleep. Henry walked to the window, gazing at the garden where nighttime butterflies danced under the moonlight. Emily's testament hung in a frame on his office wall, a daily reminder of his promise. "You were right, daughter," he whispered to the night. "Sometimes we do have to shatter completely within our cocoons before we can fly." A slight movement caught his eye. Lily had turned in her sleep, her hand instinctively finding Daisy's. Even in dreams, their bond was unbreakable. Jack returned to the space between their beds, adjusting the blankets. On the wall, the butterflies in the mural seemed to glow faintly, guarding their slumber. He began to hum softly, the melody that had become this family's anthem. "Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do." And there, in the quiet room, lit only by moonlight, Henry Kensington finally found his peace. It wasn't the end of a story, but the start of many others, each written with love, accompanied by music, and adorned with butterflies. "Good night, my little ones," he whispered. "Good night, Emily." A final blue butterfly passed by the window, its flight gentle and resolute, like the love that bound 3 generations of a family who had learned, through loss and redemption, the true meaning of a new beginning.